Welcome to Americans for Truth Live. I'm Pete LaBarbera, president of Americans for Truth about homosexuality. We have another show for you loaded with information, a lot of it depressing, folks, and that's just the nature of the beast these days on this issue. We want to get to the point where we're not just chasing the latest outrage, which is pretty much the modus operandi of modern conservatism, even though I would say, as we talked about, with a couple days ago and yesterday with Mike, and thanks for stepping in, Mike Heath, my friend and longtime friend in the movement. And then Mike is just really helped this whole project come along, and I appreciate it so much. But we talked about, sort of the unseriousness with which modern conservatism, as it's existing today, is on this issue. And I picked up an email by Cliff Kincaid. Pull that up, Jared. This is from CPAC, which is the Conservative Political Action Conference, the annual conference outside Washington, D.C. I went last year. I'm not going this year. It's happening right now. Jared, let me see it. He's got it pulled up there, the photo. Cliff Kincaid, who's just a great American, president of American Survival, and show the part there. Well, there you got Van Jones. Van Jones, who's a hardcore leftist, was at CPAC, which is kind of interesting, but we'll go down further, Jared, where Cliff took a picture of some conservative transgenders. Okay, folks, so here you go. At CPAC, the transgenders, and I can't read that sign. Jared, can you read that sign, or can any of you guys read the signs those guys are holding? Because I can't, but it's
proud. Let me get my mic here. Proud to be conservative, proud to be transgender, proud to be American, hashtag same team.
Okay. Same team. Yeah. So in other words, patriotic, God-fearing conservatives are on the same team as transgender activists. And, this is just a microcosm of the whole problem. They're not on the same team. They can vote for conservative. They can vote for conservatives. They can vote for Donald Trump, whatever. But if you're living out this extreme revolutionary idea that men can become women and women can become men, and Bruce Jenner is really a woman. No, it's Caitlyn. He's calling himself Caitlyn, but he's still a man, folks. If you're buying into that, you are not conservative. But what's happening now, just like with Christianity, we're seeing homosexual, bisexual, transgender, next it'll be pansexual activists who are penetrating and infiltrating and subverting every institution in the culture, even CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Conference. And I wrote down, Jared, I don't think I gave you a graphic for it, but I want to do a little history lesson because we don't want to just be chasing the latest outrage. By the way, welcome to Lindell from Peru. Lindell, you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
He's there. Okay. And we've also got our friend Jeff Nell, who's a culture warrior out in Nevada.
Greetings.
Yes, Jeff, you are a great American as well. But okay, you guys, and Lindell, you're new to the program as far as being on it here. And, we try to teach, we don't want to be just chasing the latest outrage, or I could also say exploiting the latest outrage, because one of the things, and I don't know if I've articulated it very well, maybe Mike Heath could. One of the things we notice is that the conservatives, they know that these outrages get web hits, help raise money, and we're glad that they're outraged by them, the latest LGBT outrage. However, they are not serious for the most part about fighting this movement, fighting this revolution. We need a counter-revolution against the gay revolution, which is in its 50th year, the in-your-face post-Stonewall gay revolution. We're in the 50th year this year, 1969. But for the most part, we see too often anyway, the sort of let's talk about, let's exploit, let's be outraged at the latest outrage, but let's not get to the let's not be serious about getting to the core of it, which at its core is this revolutionary gay ideology. And so I wanted to read, Jared, if you could pull up Jeremiah 17, 7 to 10, because I think this is really one of the main verses. If you want to understand what is wrong with this revolution, it's all based on feelings. And as I've said, it's a movement which is seeking to justify. The reason it's so strong is it is made up of people seeking to justify their own sinful lifestyle. And they are desperate to do so. But what does the Bible say? I'll just read your version, Jared. I had NIV. Yours is probably better. Blessed is the man that trusteth in the Lord and whose hope is in the Lord, whose hope the Lord is. Verse 8, for he shall be as a tree planted by the waters, and that spreadeth out her roots by the river, and shall not see when heat cometh, but her leaf shall be green, and shall not be careful in the year of drought, neither shall cease from yielding fruit. The heart is deceitful. This is the key verse, of course. 17:9, Jeremiah, the prophet Jeremiah. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? I, the Lord, search the heart. I try the reins, even to give every man according to his ways and according to the fruit of his doings. So what we have is a movement rooted in that deception. Our hearts are deceitful. We do try to rationalize behaviors. Remember Mark Sanford, the governor of South Carolina, who was married to a wonderful woman, and he pursued his adulterous affair because he said, I was in love. Remember, we try to justify things, and this whole movement is a rationalization movement. I believe Bob Riley, the author, wrote that. There's a great book. If you could look to pick that one up, Jared, Robert Riley. Excellent book. And it's all about how the gay revolution is an effort at rationalizing gay. It's rationalizing, folks. And I'm sorry, Jared, I did not even give you the title, Robert Riley, Reilly, if we can find that. I should have had a copy in front of me, but we'll be talking about that book because Bob, who's a great, just a tremendous conservative intellectual, tried to get to the root, to the core of the issue, which is about rationalizing gay. And that's what the movement's about. But I want to talk about what Scott Lively says before we get into the outrage of this program, Making Gay Okay. There it is. Making Gay Okay by Robert Riley. It's a tremendous book. It's a thoughtful read. This is not shallow, but he tries to get to the root of it. Making Gay Okay. And it's a book I highly recommend. And the subtitle is How Rationalizing Homosexual Behavior is Changing Everything. So it's a rationalization. Jeff, would you agree? I mean, that's what it's all about. People trying to justify their own sin. And the reason they're so driven is because that's what it's all about for them. They can't admit that what they're doing is wrong. And so they've got to rationalize it.
It's true. It's the feeling, the sexual orgasm.
Right. Well, there's that, of course. And that's another problem is that, sex is great and orgasm, we're not going to be talking about orgasms on this show, but I mean, sex is great. It is a wonderful thing, but it is to be kept in its proper space that God intended, which is marriage between a man and a woman. And what happens are people are getting, they're getting that orgasm through deviant practices. And then we even talked about, Jeff, the very sad story of people like Don Lemon, the CNN broadcaster, who were molested, and they experienced that sexual experience very young, and then they came to believe, and he was molested by an adult, young adult homosexual when he was a boy, Don Lemon on CNN. Very famous left-wing host, Trump hater, Don Lemon. Pull him up there, Jared. He was molested as a boy by a homosexual predator, and then they carry through and of course you're going to be confused. You're going to be sexually confused when your first sexual experience, when your first taste of what all that is homosexual by a homosexual predator. And now he is gay. Now he believes he's gay. And of course that's rooted in the predation experience, the child molestation experience that he experienced when he was young. And our hearts go out to him. We need to pray for this guy because he is a sexually confused guy, because he is the victim of a predator. Now that doesn't exonerate everything he does. That doesn't mean that everything that, Don Lemon is innocent. Everybody has their cross to bear, and he is choosing now to embrace this sinful lifestyle, and he's now modeling it to others, and that's wrong. But nevertheless, my heart goes out to him because he is the victim of a predator when he was a boy. And I think victims of pedophiles, I think that's one of the saddest things in the human experience. But I want to read the five progression states, and I'll get you a graphic, Jared, for future shows. But Scott Lively is a brilliant guy. He's one of the bravest individuals in the world. He's experienced a lot of persecution, and he's traveled all over the world defending God's order for sex, natural sexuality in marriage. And Scott talks about the 5 stages of gay progression in the culture. Number 1 is tolerance. Number 2 is acceptance. Number 3 is celebration. Number 4, which is where we're at right now, forced participation in gay, and you can say also trans, because the trans revolution is just a facet of the gay revolution. It's an even more radical offshoot of the gay revolution. So number 4 is forced participation in gay trans culture. And number 5 is punishment of dissenters. We're also in stage 5. And people like Bill Watcott in Canada and the street preachers, Jeff, your counterparts in the UK, they're in that stage even worse in Canada and the UK, where they are now becoming a politically correct police state. And there are people who want to make the United States a politically correct police state. Excuse me. The left wants to use state power to oppress people. Not everybody on the left. There are honest liberals who believe that there's total freedom of speech, and we applaud you for that. But there are lots of people on the left who want to crush dissent. They want to crush they want to make it much harder. I mean, privately, they're all doing it, right? Through this censorship, this grotesque, politically correct censorship we're seeing all the time, places like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. The liberal center they're working within the private realm, and a lot of people, and I find myself in this field. When a company is so big that it's getting multi-million-dollar tax breaks, maybe it's not just a private company anymore, right? I mean, this is when Google has the ability to actually skew an election because their service is used by so many people the world over. Is that really just a regular company anymore? Of course not. It should not have that power. Google should not have the power to skew searches in an election, web searches. Okay, so Jared, pull up if you can the article about the monster in our midst, because I think this is one of the most fascinating and prescient things I've ever read. The other one, this is what we're going to be reading from Public Discourse. But first, Jared, it's the AFTA article, Monster in Our Midst, on the Americans for Truth website. This is from a book called Quest for God by the British historian Paul Johnson. And this is an amazing thing because it also explains why we are where we are. He talks about the root of the gay movement in the UK. Paul Johnson is British. And how it started with this false compassion, We just want to, the poor gays, the sodomy laws are oppressing them. We want to start with that. And I'm going to read this through, Jared, if you could pull it up a little bit to where it actually gets to the passage itself. There it is. Okay. This is an excerpt from the book, The Quest for God, A Personal Pilgrimage by Paul Johnson. And it begins with a section which Johnson discusses radical worldly movements, be they based on race, sexual environment, etc., that present an alternative to God, to the godly order, right? So he's describing Britain. And let's remember that our America came from Britain for the most part. The Magna Carta, our founding fathers got much of their ideas from Britain. Our preaching came from Britain, right? The gospel was, Britain was once the leading purveyor of the gospel, spreader of the gospel. Our roots are British as Americans. So what we see with the devolution of America into sexual anarchy and chaos and immorality, we see a parallel movement in Britain. And let me just read. I'm going to read straight from it. Paul Johnson writes, "The radical agenda, with its strong appeal to the idealistic, as well as the materialistic instincts of mankind, especially among young people, does constitute an alternative religion." We've talked about that. We've called it a cult. "Like any other form of humanism," Johnson writes, "it replaces God by man and the welfare or supposed welfare of man, rather than the worship of God and the obedience of its commandments, as the object of human existence and the purpose of society." Okay, a new purpose. That, of course, is its defect. The Jesuit theologian Karl Rahner once argued that it is the consciousness of God, the acceptance that there is power outside and above ourselves, to whom we owe allegiance and whose guidance we must follow, which essentially distinguishes mankind from other creatures. If belief in God were ever to fade completely from the human mind, we would not, Promethean-like, become masters of our own fate. On the contrary, we would descend to the status of very clever animals, and our ultimate destiny would be too horrible to contemplate. Very clever animals. Isn't that interesting? Okay, he goes on. And I think this is so important because this is a model for what is happening in the United States as well. I believe this argument to be profoundly true and corroborated by history. And what worries me about the new radical agenda is the danger that it will dehumanize man, just as the totalitarian alternatives did, though no doubt in rather different ways. But there are further related objections. All the items on this agenda lend themselves to extremism. Take, for instance, the issue of homosexuality, an important part of the sexual politics item. There were many of us in the 1960s, again, Paul Johnson writing about the United Kingdom, Britain in the 60s. There were many of us in the 1960s who felt that there were grave practical and moral objections to the criminalization of homosexuality. Okay, he's talking about, they called it buggery laws, we call them sodomy laws. Buggery is sort of the British evolved term for sodomy in Britain. Okay, there were many of us in the 60s who felt that there were grave practical and moral objections to the criminalization of homosexuality, and who therefore supported, as happened in most Western countries, changes in the law which meant that certain forms of homosexual behavior ceased to be unlawful. Okay, he's talking about the buggery laws, the sodomy laws. What are we talking about here today, right now? Even Donald Trump. We're gonna end the criminalization of homosexuality throughout the world, right? Okay, that's what Trump, through his gay ambassador Richard Grenell in Britain, wants to do now. Okay, next, homosexuality itself was still to be publicly regarded by society, let alone by the churches, as a great moral evil. But when men who engaged in it within strictly defined limits would no longer be sent to prison, okay? We believe this change to be the maximum homosexuals deserved or could reasonably expect. In other words, what we see is reforms done in the name of kindness, tolerance, compassion, lessening the penalties against homosexuality in the name of Christian kindness. Now think of anything today along the lines of pro-homosexual things, and it's just a variation of that. There was a time when people said, oh, we should allow domestic partnerships. We're against gay marriage. Jeff, no way. No way would we ever support marriage, but we must give them a platform, a way to solemnize, however you say that word, their unions. Okay, so let's go back. This is Britain, and he's talking about they got rid of the anti-buggery laws, the anti-sodomy laws. Okay, Paul Johnson goes on. We were proved totally mistaken. Decriminalization, I'll check my time here. Okay, we're pretty good. Decriminalization, again, ending the anti-sodomy laws, made it possible for homosexuals to organize openly into a powerful lobby, and it thus became a mere platform from which further demands were launched. Next followed demands for equality, in which homosexuality was officially placed on the same moral level as standard forms of sexuality, and dismissal of identified homosexuals from sensitive positions, for instance, in schools, children's homes, etc., became progressively more difficult. In other words, most people didn't want to have homosexuals, open homosexuals, running children's homes. Okay, they didn't want it. But by ending the sodomy law, stopping that became progressively more difficult. Johnson continues. This was followed in turn by demands not merely for equality, but privilege. The appointment, for instance, of homosexual quotas in local government, the excision from school textbooks and curricula and university courses, passages or books or authors they found objectionable. In other words, passages critical of homosexuality. They wanted them taken out of the books. He goes on. Special rights to proselytize, and not least the privilege of special programs to put forward their views, including the elimination of the remaining legal constraints on radio and television. He goes on, Paul Johnson. Thus we began by attempting to right what was felt an ancient injustice, and we ended up with a monster in our midst, powerful and clamoring, flexing its muscles, threatening, vengeful, and vindictive towards anyone who challenges its outrageous claims, and bent on making fundamental, and to the most of us horrifying, changes to civilized patterns of sexual behavior. Here indeed we have sexual politics in action, and as with other alternatives to God, the result is not human happiness, but human misery. The homosexual community, as they now style themselves, and that's what we say here, right? We talk about the gay community, the trans community, right? We use that word community. The homosexual community, as they now style themselves by their reckless promiscuity during the 1970s and 1980s, helped to spread among their members the fearful scourge of AIDS, a killer disease of peculiarly horrible nature for which there is no cure and no immediate likelihood of a cure. Now, he was writing that many years ago. There is now a sort of a makeshift cure for HIV/AIDS, which allows people to live much longer with it. But it was a pandemic that cut short the lives of hundreds of thousands of gay men, and men who didn't call themselves gay, because there are lots of men who don't call themselves gay who practice that sin, usually secretly. But guys, I just want to, we'll have to go follow on with this Monday, but pull back up now. Go to that thing I wanted to read, Jared, about the parents of. Okay, folks, this is how we got here, because you can't really know what to do unless you understand how you got here. We don't want to just react to the latest outrage, because that's one tactic the homosexual lobby does. I mean, hey, now they're openly defending drag queen story hours. That's what they're called. These are men dressing as women, transvestites who want to read children's books to kids. They're defending that. They just move on to the next outrage because they know that if we're all focusing on that outrage, oh my goodness, we don't even care about gay marriage anymore. That's a done deal, right? That's a done deal. And that's the way the movement works. They're always on offense. We're always on defense, Jeff, right? We're always reacting to the latest outrage. And it all started with, it starts with compassion, right, Jeff? False compassion.
That's the trickery. That's the trickery of it. It's giving that illusion of compassion.
Right. Right. And it's the same as in the United States. And that's why I want you as Christians watching the show. And you may be watching in Kenya, you may be watching in Uganda, you may be watching in Jamaica or the UK or America, but understand that this movement has moved forward by false compassion. Now, we only have a few minutes left, but this is an article. I'm going to read this Monday. This is just shocking. I'm going to read the whole thing through, but it's found in this Public Discourses, which is a great journal, and it's called. Pull up the title there, Jared. I got it. It's called, in their own words, parents of kids who think they are trans speak out. And these are, I think they're all anonymous parents because they're afraid to put their name out there because they know they could be the victims of the targets of this incredibly vicious and nasty transgender lobby. Trans activists took the gay playbook, and they're now using it to normalize transgenderism, which is really the politics of shemaleism, right? Men becoming boys, boys becoming men. Jared, pull up that Twitter account. Alex Matheny, a Seattle transgender. This is just such a sad story. Go down, Jared. There's the one of her keep going down. This is a woman, young woman who that's a she. She wanted to become a man. And go down a little further, Jared. You'll show the picture of her before she transitioned. And folks, if your heart doesn't break over this, you have no heart. You have no heart. Go down a little bit more. And I brought this up because she was such a beautiful young woman. There she is, right there. That's Alex Matheny. Read the cat. It says, "It's been 3 years since I started testosterone." That's the male hormone that girls take, or young women or women, when they want to become like a man, a pretend man. She says, "It's been 3 years since I started testosterone. My body no longer is a source of pain and confusion. It is warm, it is loved, it is home, and it is mine." And you see the picture there. Can you blow that up a little bit bigger, Jared? Well, I guess okay, then you go to the next ones. You go to the next ones there. There she is. Now that's when she took the hormone. She had her healthy breasts removed. I just think this is the saddest thing. There she is trying to be this man, and it just makes my heart break. And folks, we're done, but this story is just being repeated over and over again because now the media is feeding this lie and social media is spreading this lie. And now we see what began in the UK with that compassion. We just want to help people, is now to the point where young women are having their healthy breasts surgically cut off by doctors. I don't even believe it should be legal when it's happened to underage. I think the whole thing is just a horrifying revolution, and we're seeing it grow and grow and grow. And this is where we are today. And it began with false compassion. We'll have to read those parents' stories. Go to that article now, Public Discourse. Read it before the show on Monday. We're going to talk about it. But we have to know where it all came from, folks. This is an ideology. This is not just about helping people about who they are. It's really about who they aren't. The left says, and the LGBT movement says, it's just about being true to who you are. But we can't have a culture in which there are 50,000 my truths. Jeff has his truth. I have my truth. Lindell has his truth. Mike Keith has his truth. That's chaos. That's chaos. Yet that's what we're being sold, because we're now living in situational morality where there's not a truth. But remember, there is a truth, and it's God's truth. And we are here to defend it, and we will defend it. And thanks to programs like this, we have the ability to defend it and to reach people. And you can help us reach more people. Spread the word about our show. Jared, go to the website. I'll show you and support our show if you can. Give us $5, $10, $20. Sign up for our email. The website is in the verge of being updated. We're going to make it much easier for you to watch the shows on the website, to sign up for the shows. Tell others about it. But, we have to defend the truth as strongly as the purveyors of this revolution are defending their lies. And shame on us as Christians if we don't defend truth with even greater determination and fortitude and boldness as those on the other side are defending their gay and their transgender and their pansexual, whatever it is, as they're defending their lies. So thanks for tuning in today. Remember always, it's God's truth, not ours. That's why we have to defend it with everything we've got. We'll see you on Monday. Have a great weekend.